Welcome to the Dance NYC 2021 Symposium. We will be with you shortly. Today's schedule. 10:15 a.m. will be our welcome and wake up. 10:30 a.m. we begin our morning sessions. 12 p.m. is your lunch hour. 1 p.m. we begin our afternoon sessions. At 2:30 p.m. we will have a short break, and at 2:45 p.m. is the daily debrief session. Move your bodies at 3:45 with a dance break. At 4:15 p.m. our virtual expo showcases begin. And 5:30 p.m. with our keynote conversation. Accessibility. ASL interpretation and live captioning will be provided for today's session. A stream-to-text link will be posted in the chat for access to the live transcriptions. Stay connected with us by posting your takeaways on social media using the hashtags DanceSymp, DanceNYC2021, DanceSymp2021, at Instagram @dance.nyc, at Twitter @dance.nyc, and at Facebook @dance/NYC. Community guidelines. Based on Dance NYC's values of justice, equity, and inclusion, we agree to share our opinions, challenge perspectives, and engage or debate respectfully, and acknowledge and course correct if harm is caused. Honor everyone's personhood and humanity. Not tolerate speech that is disparaging, abusive, violent, or that is intended to defame someone's character publicly. Some features not to miss. Build your agenda of sessions, connect with other attendees, join community conversations, and visit the exhibitor hall. Don't forget to check out the 2021 Symposium digital program book with curated thematic guides. We are happy to be in community with you. Thanks for joining.
Hello, everyone. My name is Al Blackstone. I am a member of the Symposium Programming Committee and a director, choreographer, and educator focused primarily on storytelling through dance. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I identify as a Caucasian, non-disabled male. I have dark, short hair, a black beard, and I am wearing a blue shirt with small white flowers on it. My visual background is the white wall of a dance studio faculty lounge. There are two posters on the wall, one of which says Above and Beyonce in swirly black script. I have been working and living on the unceded land of the Lenape people. For those of us just joining, please visit our land acknowledgement on the agenda page and lift up the indigenous lands you are currently on in the chat. I would like to start us with a moment of silence. We want to acknowledge the violence that has occurred against the Asian American community, and that this has happened after a year of continuous xenophobia and systemic failures exacerbated by COVID-19. We stand firmly in support of the well-being and safety of our Asian American dance colleagues and continue to champion the role that dance can play to foster the inclusion, integration, and human rights in the New York City metropolitan area. Let's pause. Thank you. First, thank you for joining us for the completely digital 2021 symposium held on the WOVA platform. As we are at the mercy of technology, we would like to remind you that there may be delays, sound issues, and changing circumstances that may occur during our time together. We invite you to extend us and each other grace and patience. Second, an ASL interpreter from LC Interpreting Services and closed captioning services provided by the Viscardi Center will be available throughout the session. We also will post speaker information in the description below and under the speakers module on the left side of your WOVA web app or the menu of your WOVA mobile app. This information is also available on our website. Third, feel free to post questions or comments you want to share with the community in the chat section to the right of this event room. Dance NYC's moderators will be interacting with you in the chat audience. There will be dedicated time for Q&A during this discussion, and there will be a session follow-up in the community section of WOVA where we continue the conversation if desired. Lastly, we hope you will help us to amplify these conversations. Repost, tag us, and share your takeaways on Twitter at DanceNYC, Instagram at dance.nyc, and Facebook, dance/NYC, using the hashtag DanceSimp. And now, we enter the world of mobilizing for change. How do we get what we need? This session will be a conversation on building solidarity and community within the dance field, investigating various approaches to creating change that ensure that arts workers thrive, from legislative advocacy to mutual aid and culture shift. I am thrilled to welcome Jumatatu Po as our moderator today.
Good day. I'm Jumatatu. My pronouns are flexible, and I'll let you know if I need you to use something different than what you've used. I am here on Shakori lands in a house that allows me lots of space to move around in, which I'm grateful for. And I'm here with my human friend in the other room and two beagle friends. I'm a brown-skinned Black person with my dark, kinky, braided out hair pushed back from my face a little bit with a bandana, a Black bandana that has pink flowers on it that a beautiful performer colleague of mine gave me maybe about 8 years ago. Around my neck, I have a chrome medallion with a face that's hanging a little bit below where my own face is. It's a medallion that a designer friend gave to me 2 years ago, 3 years ago, pandemic time. I'm strongly feeling the obsidian on the wire ring on my left hand, expelling negative energy. And I'm otherwise wearing black, which is offset by the brightness of the space around me. There's flat light coming from in front of me, isolated light above, and then sunlight coming in through the 2 windows behind me. And I am today probably about a 7 out of 10 in terms of in relationship to myself, not in relationship to others, so I'm looking okay, not at my very best, but I'm doing okay. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm thrilled to get out of the way very quickly, so that these amazing panelists that Candace has curated can come into this space and help to provide us with their own wisdom and guidance that we really need right now, when there's just so much violence vibrating inside of us as a result of the violence that's happening in so many places right now. So I'm looking forward to it. Today we have Sulynn, Hago, Melissa Riker, Brittany Williams, Marz, Saffore, to be joining us, talking about art and organizing, creating solidarity, and what it means to honor our differences in relationship to that solidarity. When is it that that solidarity is productive and propulsive? And when do we need to question those relationships that we're forming as they're growing, as they're changing, which is all the time, as we're changing, which is all the time? I'm sitting in a room where I can hear these wind chimes from outside, which is reminding me of the wind, which is reminding me of the incessantness of the wind. And this morning I've been thinking about the necessary incessantness of organizing, which is happening all the time, whether we're involved or not. So we really need to be, because there's no excuse not to be. I grew up in an organizing family. And like growing up with things from your family, I feel like my relationship to organizing has been very full and often fraught, and lots of things, full in the way that I experience my family in a full way. And so I'm excited to, through this conversation, bring in the nuances of the size, the space, the scale of organizing. How that organizing that is happening all around us, in collaboration with us or in spite of us, how that organizing we can be involved in on micro levels, on macro levels, interpersonally, in direct action, in collaboration with international partnerships, in collaboration with our housemates. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is, and forgive me, y'all, I don't think that we've chosen an order for today, but what I'd like to do is hand it over to the panelists, who will one by one introduce themselves, and then we'll continue into a conversation around some questions that I'm curious about, how the each of the panelists will interact with those questions. So thank you.
Hi, Jumatatu, you may begin.
Hello. I'm sorry, begin for, but one moment, please. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit confused, folks. I just need some clarity. I should begin from the beginning. Thank you. Okay. So what I'd like to do is first to introduce Melissa Riker, who will introduce herself.
Thank you, Jumatatu. Your description was so beautiful. I think I might have to go in a much more plain direction. My name is Melissa Riker. I am a white woman with curly brown hair. I have red glasses today, and I'm wearing a wine-colored cowl neck soft top that that I love. I love to move around in, and it gives me some comfort and joy as I sit here with you. I'm sitting in front of a black IKEA setup that has some drawers in it, some empty spaces, and a few favorite books, and a jewelry box that was made by my grandfather that I love and like to keep in view. And I'm sitting in a room where I can see the sky and I can spend time with the sunshine. And hopefully that keeps me a little bit more open as I stay in conversation with all of you. I am on the unceded lands of the Lenape in Lenapehoking in Manhattan, and Manhattan. And my pronouns are she, hers, and hers. I am the artistic director of Kinesis Project Dance Theater. Kinesis Project is a large-scale outdoor dance company. We create works that live in the public space, and we create dance works to live in the public space, to create as much accessibility to dancers fully dancing and being present as we can. Those large scale means over 10 blocks of space on huge amounts of beachland. And that then transitions into the reason I'm here today, which is my role as the founder of Dance Rising. And Dance Rising is an organization that came together because of the pandemic and is moving forward with the hope and the way of uniting dancers to continue dancing and to continue empowering them to take space, learn how to advocate for themselves, and to bring as much visibility to the dance community of all forms as possible. Thank you.
And from here, can we go to Marz?
Yes. Hi, I'm Marz, pronouns she, her. I am a Black, brown-skinned woman wearing this kind of brown, gold, honeycomb sweater that I wear all the time. It's very comforting. It's very soft. I'm sitting in my home office here in Brooklyn, which is on the unceded land of the Lenape. I have some sunlight pouring in from the corner of my screen. I wish there were more. Like Melissa, I wish that I had a sky to look at. But there's a backyard behind this door, so that's really helpful. I'm surrounded by books, lots of books to my left and my right. There's a bookshelf here. There's a bookshelf to one side and books lining a shelf on the wall to the other side, as well as a couch, which I sometimes find myself sleeping on during all-nighters from this PhD program I'm in. And I am a organizer with Decolonize This Place, which is an action-oriented movement centered around 6 strands, starting with Indigenous Struggle, Black liberation, free Palestine, degentrification, dismantling patriarchy, and global wage workers. And as Jumatatu has outlined in the introduction, solidarity amongst struggles is incredibly important, especially when you think through the way that we all have common oppressors, and the way that colonization has affected different groups of people. Now, the goal in DTP, or Decolonize This Place, isn't to lose the specificity of each of the struggles, but instead understand that our liberation is contingent upon each other's. And a lot of the work that we do happens in art institutions or cultural institutions, thinking through the ways in which you can, if one can, decolonize those spaces, given their colonial histories and their colonial roots. So I'm really excited to be here today to discuss these questions. Organizing, solidarity, these are things that get me up in the morning. So, yeah.
And from here, can we please go to Brittany?
Good morning, y'all. My name is Brittany Williams. I'm a dancer, organizer. I am from the 305. That is Miami. I live in New York City. Currently, I am in the maroon swamps of South Florida. I am standing upon Palino, Tequesta, Seminole, and Miccosukee land. Some of these communities are still here. I live near the swamps. And so I'm happy to be home to continue to dig. My pronouns are she, her. I do have a temporary disability, which impacts my vision. So if I am off camera, I'm active. It may still be talking. It's just a lot for me to be on screen a lot right now. I am the co-founder of WoodShed Dance, which is digital Black space for Black artists, Black movement artists. When the pandemic hit, we didn't quarantine. I didn't quarantine. We hopped into motion trying to figure out ways to actually support artists who we've known the pandemic has been here since before COVID, right? And so the digital platform is there for folks to teach class. We had 2 intensives now, which were really great to be in space with Black and Brown people. And I'm also a co-conspirator with Get This War Dance. And Get This War Dance is looking at Black dances as war dances, as the information that's coming out of our body, the embodiment of it, the genetical codes of it as war dance, recognizing that we have always been at war in this colonial settler situation. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany. And finally, Sulynn, would you please introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, I'm Sulynn Hago. My pronouns are they, them. I identify as a trans non-binary Latinx individual. I reside in the Canarsie Lenape region in Brooklyn, or aka Brooklyn, but I'm currently in Seminole region in Tampa, Florida, where my family's from. I'm a guitarist, and I'm here with MWA, which is the Music Workers Alliance. Oh, I should describe my background. Yeah, let me do that first. I am wearing a kind of creamish button down. I have black hair, a little messy up top from my own haircut, little mullety in the back too. And then there's a large frame behind me. There's a bit of a glare there. There's some painting of flowers, which is really nice and peaceful. White background, white walls, and there's a guitar next to me and a couple other items like a dresser and a bench. So yeah, I'm here with Music Workers Alliance, which is an organization made up entirely of music workers and DJs. And we came together because being fed up of the conditions and the treatment in the workplace as musicians, unfair gigs, unfair payment, and streaming in the digital domain, really demanding justice there. fair contracts, maybe even contracts in general, sometimes at gigs, and especially during the pandemic, really fighting for getting aid as a musician, and how difficult it's been because of how much unemployment there is. And so a lot, including, also accessibility to performance for different, races and genders, and just really just all in all, it's a better work environment for musicians is the idea, and just and really good community building, and just building solidarity for musicians. Thank you.
Thank you, y'all. Okay. I'm gonna just name that I'm feeling a little frantic because I feel like I messed up at the beginning in terms of the kind of positioning of things. So I'm calming myself down. And but I'd like to, continue full forward because y'all are so wonderful. I'm excited to be here with y'all. And I want to I'm thinking about communication. I think it's something that vibed with one of the questions that I had posed. I think, Brittany, when you were speaking, something that you said, and I'm thinking about how the framing of the words that we use, the framing of the ways that we are in relationship to folks, all of that creates a kind of container for communication without which, we don't have those opportunities to engage in action, engage in organizing with folks. And so that communication becomes so central, so crucial, and really contributes to how we frame our leadership, how we put our leadership in relationship to, in interaction with the folks with whom we are, with whom we're working, with whom we're organizing, with whom we're in solidarity. And I'm wondering, for each of you, like Sulynn, you were talking about the unfair gigs, like unfairness of the contracts or lack of contracts, and all of these things create a certain kind of assumption about what the importance of, like a contract could be, what the importance of work could be, like a kind of baseline understanding that, okay, we're working for this reason. And then there's so many different ways that those words hit different folks. And so I'm wondering, for each of you, what is the way that you frame your leadership in order to be in interaction with the people? What does your leadership look like, taste like, sound like? What does it feel like? And what's the leadership that you crave? What's the leadership that you're putting yourself in the direction toward?
I think sometimes accessibility in this kind of organizing work is important. At least that's like what got me. I think I've had the activist spirit inside of me, but as a musician, I have introverted qualities heavily, and so it's like being able to be that person, but still be like on the front lines with communicating these ideas, and just I think when you have these feelings that you have struggles that you feel on your own with it. So communication is just openness, like, and it's involvement of others, and the more you do that, the more you realize you're not alone. Like, you're this orb of humans that are going through the same thing, even if the distinctions are different, like, certain details. So I think that's as far as leadership, that's something, like, to be able to communicate that is important. That it's not like a pedestal to be a leader. It's more like, I'm one of you, you're one of me, and let's lead each other into a better condition, a better position for the thing that we love and that we've really sacrificed so much for. Sulynn out.
Britt, you can go. Britt, go for it.
Okay. I think for me is denouncing the pedestal that society, Twitter, social media likes to put activist organizers on. It's me in leadership seeing my own humanity and also seeing that I always have work to do, right? I think like the work is iconic. I am human. I'm a Black woman. Is how I'm beginning to look at things. And also like being in community and leadership is being in the frying pan. Jawale talks a lot about that. That's the one thing that stuck with me, is staying in the frying pan, staying in the study. I think that is the thing that sticks with me more. Like, so like this hierarchy around who gets to become a leader is also interesting. And so like I'm constantly in a space where I am deconstructing to reconstruct these ideas of leadership, right? Given that in movement space, in community, we all have something to give. If you're showing up to the potluck with an empty hand, that means you may be sweeping the floor at the end, right? Or like something like that, as that simple, right? And then the last thing I'll say is leadership for me is being able to step up, step back, but also recognize others' brilliance in the process, and potential in the process, and not getting that conflated, but also really supporting each other. You know, like when the cameras are not on, when we're not in the street. Hey, did you eat today? Hey, how can I really show up in that way? And also taking a step back and resting. I know to a lot of people it doesn't seem that way, but I do take moments of rest. Yeah, and deep reflection.
Yeah, I mean, so many great things have been said so far. But what I would add is that I think great leaders encourage other people to be leaders, right? And that's from a tactical standpoint in the streets, it makes more sense that way. And so my example is, you know, I threw down with Brittany and a bunch of other cool people here in New York during the FTP actions that took place in 2019 and 2020 against the NYPD and the MTA after attacks on young Black and brown children that the NYPD carried out on the subway platform here in Brooklyn. And, you know, a march, for example, a centralized march is so easy for the police to control, to kettle, to arrest. What we started encouraging people to do is to decentralize it. Everyone go with your own affinity groups, your own concentric circles of 2 to 10 people that you're in charge of, and you go whatever way you want to go. And in the streets, that helps because it's easier to kind of repress a large group of 1,000 than to repress hundreds of groups of 2 to 10. And in that way, people start to realize that they actually know how to move in the streets. I think this is where Brittany's work really comes in. It's in us to know how to lead ourselves, to move, to resist in the streets. And people stepped up and people stepped back. And I think that was a really great moment for me, tactically, strategically, from an organizational standpoint, it just made a lot of sense. So that's what I would say about leadership.
I feel that's incredible, and I love that that feeling of philosophy of sending everybody to their own voices. My thought was that I work in a space of collaboration all the time. I work in that space in my dance company where my dancers' voices are as important as my voice. These dances wouldn't happen without them. So as a leader, I bring them forward. And I feel like I take care of artists in Estrogenius and in the way that we work in Women in Motion, which are two other organizations that I'm part of leading. There is a constant collaborative element that the voices of the group are what need to come forward. And in Dance Rising, very much the same. You know, when we were first having the conversations, I talked to some folks kind of on the outside of the conversation who were saying they were kind of pushing towards like a flash mob sort of thing in Times Square. And we kept saying, no, this is for everyone. This is for everyone who, and wherever they feel safe, wherever their voice needs to be heard, whatever their space is, and whatever their movement is. And so opening it up and proclaiming that we did not want to control anyone's voice and we did not want to control anyone's sense of space meant that we could really just put the power in the dancer's hands of every single style, placement, and what empowerment meant to them in those moments, however brave they felt like they needed to be or could be. And that feeling of, you know, the word that keeps coming to mind for so many things that have been said already is container. Just like saying this concept is part of the hold. And then you are able to take that hold and open it up and find the layers and keep unraveling what the edges of that container are. I feel like it creates so much power for all of us, as Marz said to be moving us out further in smaller groups.
Thank y'all. So much of, I feel like what I'm getting from all of what you've been saying, so much of these experiences, these organized experiences, and finding the depth in them, it feels like has so much to do with what each of you are craving about sociality, about being social, about being with folks, and probably about, you know, who your folks are, who you're gonna be with. And, you know, like I want to disillusion real quick, because I didn't do it already, this moderator role. Please, if you disagree, please, I don't think that this group will have any hesitation, but in case you do, if you disagree with, you know, any of these kind of like containers that I'm putting this in order to get to a place, please disagree out loud, because that'll get us to a place too. Thinking about that, this organizing as a means, as a method to being together, as a kind of instructional in how to be together. Brittany, I relate so much to this, you know, if you didn't show up with any food, you might be sweeping the floors at the end, you know, like figuring out. And there's also I'm wondering, for that person who's sweeping the floor at the end, you know, like, is that an assignment that was given? Is that a choice that was made? You know, like all of that kind of construction too, of how people figure out how to get in where they fit in, or how it's figured out and suggested to them or mandated, you know. And I imagine that there's lots of different leadership that you all have been in relationship to, leadership that you've been under. I think that probably, you know, that's a one way to think of it, or leadership that you've been amongst. And so it makes me want to know what and or who inside of your calling into this work that you're doing, inside of you, into feeling like you had the charge and or the permission. Because I'm thinking about like so many of you working with direct action, like in public space, I'm thinking about how you deal with the permission and or the entitlement, to occupy, to know that this is my struggle, this is the right place to be, and how firmly is that right? So I feel like there's two parts to this question. Who is it, or what is it that incited you into this calling? And then what's your metric like for knowing like, okay, I'm on the right track, or I'm on the right track. And I'm gonna stop there.
I'd love to speak to, I don't know if I can speak to both of them, but I'm happy to speak to one of them. Something that I realized that is part of the beginning of Dance Rising was I had a draft email that I had started writing in July that was inspired by conversations that were happening in the Dance NYC Thursday call. So Dance NYC was bringing everybody together in the dance field. It was doing a field-wide call from, I think, May forward. And Alejandra was saying, what can we do to make dance visible? And that thought just kept coming to me. And so I had drafted an email to people that I love and trust and think are incredible, and was shy to send it. And then the realization was, because I didn't want to take charge and say this is what we had to do. So I kept going back to it and saying, how can I just offer who I am in service of our field at this time? And so I pared down all of the thoughts, and I just said, as a large scale choreographer, as somebody with a big imagination, I'm here in service of what we come together and do. And that's really what ended up, I think, that's what ended up going out into the world. That's what ended up building the collective that became Dance Rising. So in a lot of ways, kind of taking the leadership away from myself even before it started, and just offering what I knew were my skills in this moment. I think to the other part of your question, something that we're all experiencing in our world on a regular basis is everyone's energy levels. Not everyone has the same energy level from one meeting to the next. And I think part of this collaboration energy is seeing, and kind of leadership energy is seeing where everyone falls in the mix in these moments. What energy can you ask for from someone depending on where they are that day? And I feel like that's constantly in flux, and leaving that open to interpretation and reinterpretation and action is something that kind of echoes to me. And that's all I have for right now.
Brittany speaking. I think this permission for me, coming from a hyper militant, militarized, policed community, coming from a community like I don't know how many mothers have raised me in community. So this idea of public space and taking up space, community has raised me, but has always been where I've lived, staying in multiple mama's houses and things like that, and so I have a deep, and I also live in a Maroon community. Like Maroon communities are not disappeared from the United States, they're here. So we have a different type of relationship with each other, and how we build and how we live, and how that's not spoken, not written, it's just there, right? I think for me, I never asked for permission, not even from my mother. I would do things and she'll be like, So you're just going to take these consequences, right? Like, yeah, right. So I've always been that type of person. And I also have always been a person at the brunt of violence in many different ways in community that's very hyper militarized, like policing. And so I think that is and like my grandmother um, is an indigenous Black woman who didn't take no stuff from anyone. I would just say that, right? And so I think these influences on my life has traveled into the way I organize, into the way I dance and move. In a sense, I do want to say there is no movement, like there wouldn't be a movement without movement, right? And so when we think about permission and what we are, supposed to be doing, we've always been in motion, we always been in moving, right? And so improvisation, all these many choreographic tools that we claim to be choreographic tools in the dance world are what we use in organizing and direct actions, creativity. All these things are improv scores, making sure people come in and out. People find their roles in the moment that is needed, or they're assigned, right? But I do think that the biggest part and the biggest lesson for me is knowing who your people are and double checking who your people are. If that person is sweeping up the floor, that means you may want to follow up with them, call them, hey, how you doing? You coming to you was at the action, but you gonna come to the study group. And I'll stop there.
Yeah, I mean, similar to Britt, when I hear the word permission, I'm like, that's cute. To be quite honest. I'm a Gemini. Anyways, what I will say is this: if you're protesting the police in the streets, you're gonna ask the police to march? You're gonna get a permit to protest the police from the police? If you're protesting a cultural institution, are you gonna go ask their board if you could deoccupy their galleries, to deoccupy their classrooms? They're gonna be like, nah, you can't. There is no permission. And they took that, like, and it's not. We have to know in ourselves that us not asking for the permission doesn't make us rowdy. It doesn't make us wrong in any way. We have to decondition ourselves in these ways. I'm thinking of Fanon right now in terms of Frantz Fanon's work, in terms of people like to put certain narratives on organizers around, terrorist, unwieldy, violent even. And what Fanon always when I'm reading Fanon and thinking of his work, it always recenters me to remember that the colonial regime is itself violent. The colonial regime puts us in positions where we have to act out. So if I'm in the streets during COVID and there's an 8 p.m. curfew, but I'm like Britt's like, yeah. And there's an 8 p.m. curfew and I'm protesting the conditions in which I'm living under. Do you think I'm really going to leave the streets at 8? Because you told me to, when you're the one killing me, when you're the one with a gun to my back or your knee to my throat? Absolutely not. It's just not going to happen that way. So I think we have to kind of think about, this idea of permission. Now, in terms of like who or what has brought me to organize, I think, I'm a true believer that my great-grandmother, when she made the decision that day in the field to help folks escape, she planted a seed that all of her descendants will be, I have to watch my language, but we'll be out here in the streets doing what needs to be done. I know that's what was meant for me when I was born into this world, to be out in the streets doing what needs to be done. And as Britt mentioned, when violence is all around you in this heavy militarized police state, you have no choice but to fight back. And I'll leave it there.
Hi, Sulynn here. It's so great hearing everyone's like reactions, because it's like especially the permission thing, like that resonates with me. Just even like how you respond to that, because to me, I think of it as like I've nested myself in this position of not airing my grievances for so many years, and that's almost like how I think of permission. Like it's like, you know, my background is in punk and metal, which is a very white male dominated genre, and so there's a lot to fight over, and even just to exist. And it's almost like, you know, the permission is it's almost like this throat chakra, being even allowed to be vocal about what you're even going through. And I think activism is that platform to do it, not on your own, to not feel like you're left on a whim, like kind of left to dry by yourself, and you have true support. And so that's, you know, I think that drive has always been in it, you know, playing punk and metal. I think those genres are activists in the sense the message is that's what it's all about. It's just like really promoting, like it's educating people on the realities of so many oppressive scenarios that people deal with. So, and I think so, and in a sense, you know, playing punk, I've had my, let's say, my hand in activism that way, but I felt like it's the message, but now there needs to be the action. And that's, you know, to kind of second the part of who got me involved. I'd say punk, the music, and like metal got me into the message aspect. But like it's actual individuals who already were organizing. One being Mark Rebo, the guitarist, who's an inspiration of mine, and now an ally and a friend, and he's also part of Music Workers Alliance. Just, you know, having one person to kind of model that, and then it's the intrigue of like being invited to a Music Workers Alliance meeting and see what it's about, and then you just feel the energy and everyone of all different backgrounds and generations just bouncing these grievances about music, but that are deeper than just, you know, it's obviously like I'm saying the organization is about, say, like the music workplace, but it's deeper than that. You know, it always is. And so it's so that's what what kind of drove me to it. Yes, may have been an individual source, and maybe had been in, like the energy of this music, but it's also the need to break the cycle. You know, it's like, you know, thinking about generationally what, you know, relatives, like ancestors of mine or anyone else's has gone through. It's like, here's the time to break the cycle. We don't want to be a rerun of the oppression that other people have done, and that's why we're here and doing this activist work. That's kind of what brings me to it. Sulynn out.
And I'm thinking about, this is Jumatatu speaking. Sulynn, in talking about breaking the cycle, you know, I mean, cycle, for me, I feel like there's the implication that, you know, we've been here before. We know this. We have a familiarity with this, and breaking that is going towards something that we don't know, that we know differently, that we dream about, that we suspect. And I'm curious about, this goes back to the question, which I want to cycle back around, you know, because now we know it a little bit better, which is in part of that last question, that last hefty question that I posed. I was also curious about what is the kind of metrics that you use to assess rightness, to assess that you're right with your folks that you're working with, to assess that, you know, you're this really is the rightness of the path moving toward the worlds that you want to achieve collaboratively. How do you do that? You know, what do you use to monitor that? You know, and how frequently does that monitor shift? You know, what kind of tuning tools do you have to make sure that that monitor is also right with you? Oh, I'm sorry, Brittany. I'm out.
If anyone would like to go for it, or I'll can. You know, I think this is a really. I'm just going to be really, really honest here. This is a conversation and movement in the movement world that we absolutely need to have, right? When we understand that COINTELPRO has not died out, when we understand what happened to Black Wall Street, when we understand the history and the levels of infiltration, the levels of assassination, the level that the state will go to keep capitalism, racism, all these different isms into place, right? They have resources, they have skills, etc., right? And so I think just some basic things that we have done in New York City. One of them has been principles of unity. Shannon Jones from White Accountability talks about principle of unity around everyone in a room, having conversations. What do we agree to? What do we not agree to as a movement or whatever campaign or small actions that you're doing? What do we agree upon in this space? What happens if someone breaks those agreements? How do we return back to that information, right? I think is one step. For me, is my intuition. I am a artist. I dream. My ancestors will tell me dreams, signs, wonders, like really, really being attuned. If you're organizing and you're not aligned, and that alignment maybe with the universe or whatever you know is your covering, right? That alignment will let you know. And that alignment will bring a different type of foresight, but you have to be listening, not just listening to that, but listening to every single thing around you. And like when we're talking about safety, when we're talking about like metrics are, like, hey, if we're doing a small direct action where it's like, when city council was trying to build new jails, we went into city hall and it was like 5 of us, right? And we ended up throwing leaflets down. Our metrics for that action was, did we disrupt? Like it was really small, but something like FTP, hey, that first march, it was thousands of people that we did not expect to attend, right? And so we had to gather people, move, we're able to shift quickly. So it's based off of who is in the space, how are y'all moving, and how can we continue to be in motion and flexible and respond to what's actually happening on the ground, and being critical at the end to say, hey, we screwed up, hey, we did this really well, hey, we can use this for the next time.
Yeah, I'll go off of that. I think community, sorry, this is Marz. I think community is at the root of both of these kind of questions around metrics, around accountability. So one, I'll say that you need to keep your community tight. As Brittany said, you need to double check. I would add triple check your community, because there are folks who I was thought that we were ride or die about a year ago, and we ain't no more. And that's important work as well. That's a large part of the work. Unfortunately, I know it's not as glamorous, but a large part of the work is really building that trust, that foundation of trust and love and care with other people. Now, when you're in that small, tight community, you have to be real with you have to trust each other enough to be real with each other about failures, about successes, about areas that you can grow in. It's not even necessarily about being right or wrong. It's just a matter of how can we constantly improve. And in terms of metrics for me, I think that the relationships that we build in direct action and organizing that's the metric. Because at the end of the day, we're creating abolitionist and decolonial worlds in the here and now, despite racial capitalism, despite patriarchy, despite all this, xenophobia, all of this nonsense. We are building those worlds in the here and now. And if we are, then we have to learn how to relate to each other in ways that aren't bound by colonialism's logic. And if that's the case, then, that's my metric. Okay, like, for example, after an action that Decolonize This Place did against the Whitney Museum, for example, 9 weeks of consistent art and action against the Whitney Museum because their vice chairman was a weapons manufacturer, Warren Kanders, who has since stepped down. People from around the world were tweeting that the tear gas that Warren Kanders created was used against their people, from Standing Rock to Baltimore to Tijuana to Puerto Rico, Turkey, Kashmir, it literally around the Palestine, around the world. And the workers wanted Warren Kanders, the vice chairman, to step down. That was their metric. Our metric was that as well, but a big metric for us was how do we stand in solidarity with each other's struggles, given the fact that this tear gas is used against all of us, without losing the specificity or the specific context of each struggle. What does it look like? What does it look like to, be Palestinian and stand in solidarity with Puerto Rico? What does it look like for me as a queer Black woman to think through the ways that even though I'm oppressed on this land, my American citizenship, how does that work and weaponize against other people outside of the US, right? So it's all of these different things, and it's trauma. It's a lot of trauma that you're working through, but yeah, these hard conversations are definitely necessary, and I'm really thankful for the community that I have to go through it.
I have one more point. There was a world before police. We lived in it, right? Our ancestors lived in it. The other point is, Marz, you touched on this, but the way in which we treat each other cannot be the same as us organizing against the state, right? So, like, the way that we treat each other in the dance world or in the arts world cannot be the same way in which the grant process treats us, right? And so I think, like, really finding ways to see each other on a humanistic level, humility, and also like us demanding more for each other, and sending in a pay for each other when needed, and like a real support. So this idea of community is not something that's far-fetched, or it's a that is the abolitionist practice that we are continuing to create in real time, futuristic time, ancestral time, all these spheres of existence now. The question I will pose to everyone is, what happens when our imagination is not enough in an anti-Black society, right? We can't imagine ourselves out of this violence. That is practice. And as artists, we have a practice and study of movement. That is our work.
I'm going to, in case I thought that I saw maybe a movement to say something, Melissa. Just let me know.
I was going to say something.
Oh, please do.
Sure. It's this thing that is coming up for everyone as we're talking about this is the listening that is necessary, the listening and the re-listening. And as Marz and Brittany have both said, kind of assessing and then reassessing what's around you and continuing to see it. I think for Dance Rising, it was knowing that what we were doing was creating a platform for every kind of dancer. And many dancers have felt that because of the scarcity issues in our field, and because our field was already something that was extremely delicate and was pushed to almost a breaking point of sorts. Knowing that the kind of listening that was going to be necessary to let every dancer know that they were able to step onto this platform, that that's the permission, maybe, that I feel when I hear the word permission, that by us just leaving it open, it creates permission for others, and trying to push aside the rules and the ideas of permissions of others to open up the space to more and more. And so from a metric standpoint for Dance Rising, it was a constant listening and a constant assessment to how are dancers and how are all dancers taking this in, and are they hearing us, and are they hearing that it really can be for them. And so we added some questions as in the form that was just a very simple, are you going to be dancing form, and where will you be dancing? You know, claiming your space, claiming your style, claiming your choice. We also said, and you know, why are you dancing today? Or why are you choosing to dance? What is the reasoning? And that helped us just see the wave and recognize that the importance of creating accessibility and visibility for our field that had been just suddenly shut off and shoved into living rooms, and suddenly taken away from their careers and broken down in that way. That wave of recognition and openness really brought us this constant stage of, we have to keep doing this. This is obviously necessary for the dancers who are literally on the ground in spaces trying to train and trying to keep their careers growing. I think that's it for now.
Hi, Sulynn here. This all made me think, like, activism is not meant to be comfortable, you know. And I think because it's so transparent, at least I think when done best, and you know, with NWA, like, I've been working with them for a year, and I've felt discomfort continuously, which is like, that is one of the hard things about keeping at it, but it's also it's believing in it though too, like what it's trying to do, but in that discomfort kind of is authenticity, and and I think it's needed in this kind of like for mental health reasons, and you know, with dance and music, the release, and activism is just an extension of that release that we all don't currently have right now too, with performances being shut down. And so I just feel like that's kind of just what I wanted to add, is just the discomfort, you know, that's something, this is I think the most I've personally done true activist work with an organization. And, you know, like, part of the discomfort is like, yeah, you have all these different personalities, different backgrounds, generations, different speaking styles, and it's a lot of, it's like an energy and exchange that's overwhelming. But it's, as I'm bouncing off what others have said, which is, it's listening and real, and accepting that that is part of a community, that is part of organization, is the openness to be around people who are not like you, and the goal is not to all be one uniform type of person. It's to coexist as, you know, as the individuals that we are, for a common purpose, for the betterment of all of our situations, and and the art that we love. So that's all I want to add. Thank you.
Thank you, y'all. Brittany, was that a one more point sign? No, okay. Okay. Oh, okay. So first thing is that we have just a couple of minutes before we'll open up for some of the questions that hopefully will be coming from people that are watching on Hova. And that so please, so if you have questions, folks that are watching, please send them in. We'll be paying attention. Oh, God, ooh, so much coming up. Ooh, okay, I'm gonna pose one more question before we open up, which is, that there's a lot of things that I'm kind of cycling through. I'm thinking about that kind of image, as I'm a dancer, I'm a performer, and thinking about that image of Marz talking about the hundreds of groups of 10 people or 5 people, like this that are harder to control, and thinking also about, like, within those groups, that kind of I believe you used the word affinity. And I'm thinking about also the word community that has been going on, the kind of familiarity, that kind of mobilized, weaponized, potentially, that familiarity that can, like the potential to communicate really quickly with fewer words or with fewer translations, because we're working within a group. Like, okay, we get it, we get one another, so here we go. And also thinking about, Melissa, you were talking about this creating a platform for every kind of dancer, and that is the words like every terrify me. As you know, I think that they're powerful. And I work in, I didn't say this before. I was involved in the phase 1 of an organization that's called Creating New Futures, which I think has a similar kind of conceit, thinking about how to be something for every artist, performer working within this kind of nonprofit realm. And it's just, in moments like that, I'm thinking, like, I don't know all those people, and it's just like, there's all kinds of language idiosyncrasies that I'm going to use, that I know you're not going to get, and you might not get it, and you might get a piece of it, and all kinds of things that, like, you don't know. I know that you don't know. When you say this word, it is weighing on me. I know that you don't know. I'm going to give you grace, but the space to give you that grace is costing me, and I think that there's, it feels like, for me, I'm thinking about the ways that work and rest can cycle. Brittany, you were talking about that importance of rest and reflection. And then this critical, crucial organizing work is critical and crucial and immediate, because we're responding to immediate needs. And those rhythms are just so different. Those reflex responses to immediate needs, and those slow responses of reflection. And in the midst of that, like, continuous check-in, like these continuous check-ins with our community, with these new relationships that we're building, I'm wondering about, in a very kind of practical way, what some of those tactics are when you've had those realizations, Brittany, and also Marz, talking a little bit about, like, losing people in relationship to the organizing work, in relationship to the work, to the communities that you're a part of in this work. Let me get the articulation together. I'm thinking about these practical strategies of how to take care, of how to let me read the question that I have on the page, because I'm getting a little lost. It's really big. What tactics do you use to connect with others organizing in different ways, with different language, with different strategies? How do you recognize within these differences an approach when the difference becomes more than just strategic variation, but actually represent contradictory, collaborative, world-making initiatives with which you are not actually aligned. So when there's a rift in that alignment with these relationships that you've been building because they feel so necessary to that organizing, with these relationships that you've been cultivating and realizing there's this rift, what are some of the practical strategies that you do to try to repair those rifts? And when do you decide that this is irreparable? And in order for this work to happen, we have to separate. So that's that. So that's the question. What are those practical strategies to assess alignment? And what do you do when there's a rift in that alignment? And also, what does it have to do with your pacing through this work?
For so what 2015, after the verdict of Eric Gardner, I started Dancing for Justice, which I was on the streets at Union Square and was moving around New York City doing these art installations. And Candace was absolutely there. Candace was the co-founder, y'all. Was like, Candace, I have this idea. She's like, I'm coming. I'm there. Jamal Barnes, Orlando Hunter, Ricardo Valentine's, and Tamara Williams played a huge role, and I would like to name them because naming is important, right? And so, but we ended up having people perform in Philly and Chicago and Miami, and it didn't last long because for me, I understood we were responding to something, right? And I think that we have to be honest when we are responding to something. The question becomes, is it sustainable? And what is that process of, like doing hurricane work, during Hurricane Irma, we organized, I'm gonna use Marz's language, infinity groups across the country to come together and send food, money, everything to people in South Florida, Puerto Rico. But when it was done, we didn't have a political analysis that held the container together. So, which means that if we were to move forward with an organization, we most likely would have contradictions. We would most likely have all these things sitting there, right? I think the question becomes, when are we going to start the organizing, in a sense, in quotations, without reacting to Black death, without reacting to state violence, right? That I'm sitting with here around, like, most of my organizing outside of dancing, because I've done a lot of organizing and dancing, has been around state violence or showing up for communities that may be incarcerated or hurricane disasters, something to that nature, right? And so that alone gives us contradictions. People coming in from all parts of the world may not have your analysis, may not even be your community, right? And so that is a lot to digest and process. And if you don't have infrastructure or ways of building that analysis outside of that, it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, building off that, I would say that there's an ecosystem in organizing, and there's a diversity of tactics that people need to take to be free. What I do can't be what you do, and what you do can't be what I do. It's just how it works. And so some people organize in ways that look drastically different than you. Cool, you don't need to work together. That's fine, let them do them. Here's the thing though, what Britt's talking about in terms of having your analysis solid, I think is the most important thing. Whenever I see people organizing and everyone in that room doesn't have the same political analysis, I don't understand how they work. And if they do work, that's cool. But I personally can't work like that, because when it comes down to it, oh, we don't agree on Palestine, I'm walking out the door. There's no middle ground for me. Because it truly is life or death. And I get, like, the quick example I'll give is I was in a room folks wanted to shake some things up in terms of, you know, the mayor, like targeting some new policies that the mayor of New York City had just made. And my whole thing was just like, you know, I'm used to getting people's addresses and storming their house. Like, that's what we did to Warren Kanders. We found a 16 West 12th Street, New York, if anyone's interested. We found his house and we went there and rolled up on him. So I'm like, who we rolling up on? And the people in the room were kind of like, actually, I work in that office, so I don't feel comfortable with putting my work in jeopardy for this action. For me, that was then this isn't for Marz. If we're gonna really be so attacked, like I go to school at and I teach at NYU, I will burn universities to the ground. I don't care if they do sign my paycheck, because universities are horrible places. And I'm okay with that. That's my comfort level. It may not be your comfort level to burn your work to the ground. That's cool. Then maybe we don't need to work together. But there's a diversity of tactics and there's an ecosystem. And we can all be doing things within that ecosystem. And it's okay if we don't work together, you know? I think that's something that sometimes people are so concerned with unity and like making these mass coalitions when, you know, that necessarily doesn't need to be the point.
And that's also do think I have to just say this. Our reward, like our organizing, our community, the way that we're building trust, the way that we're seeing each other has to be greater than whatever white supremacy is offering us, whatever white supremacy rewards are, greater than our oppression. Our vision for how we want to live collectively together has to be greater than anything that a person can offer us. Capitalism, like literally, right? Like to be in real struggle with each other, that deep struggle that we were talking about earlier, it cannot be something that a check can cash right off, you know? So that's where I'm at when we're talking about how we seeing each other. Do we need to write? Are you compromising my freedom? I'm walking away.
I just want to come in real quick because I just see that we're really supposed to be doing our outro right now. So I'll ask, I know it's a big question, but I'll ask for any subsequent responses to be brief, and then we need to wrap up. Y'all are amazing. Y'all are wonderful. I'm so blessed and honored. Okay. Melissa, I just want to check with you if you're okay to go on.
I think I am. I think that last question was answered beautifully. Thank you all.
Thank you. What I'd like to remind those of us who are, all of us who are here or, catching this conversation later after it's aired live, is that, this hour and a half is like a little pebble on the beach of sand next to the massive ocean, underneath the massive sky, in the massive planet, in the massive universe. This is just one piece. There's no way that we can answer all of the questions that we have, let alone the questions that people are coming in with. But I'm so grateful for this beautiful moment of community, moment of coming into conversation with one another. I'm grateful for the work that y'all are doing. Thank you. I don't think I want to say too much more than that. And I'm sorry. Is there a video that brings us out? I think okay.
Thank you so much, Jumatatu. Thank you for the energy and the warmth and the depth of everything that you brought to this conversation. Thank you to all of the panelists, my dear friend Brittany, Marz, my new friend, Melissa Riker, and Sulynn Hago for today's wonderful conversation. To our attendees who are watching, who are participating, thank you so much for being just in the chat and participating, and wherever you are, thank you for just like showing up for all of the sessions that we've had so far. I just want to say thank you to our sponsors, thank you to our funders, thank you to our captioner from Viscardi Center, Savi, thank you to Brandon Kazan Maddox and Candice Daviter for all of their support over the past few days. We are headed to the session follow-up chat if you want to keep talking about this. We as in you in the community. And for the rest of the day, what we can expect is visit our people in the exhibitor hall, our sponsors. You can create virtual meetups, so online conversations on the community board, which I'm sure y'all have already been doing. Chat is popping. You can message other folks. Don't forget that today's transformation thematic guide was curated by Yanira Castro, who will also be leading the daily debrief that happens at 2:30, or 2:45, I should say. So visit your agenda to observe everything that's going on. We're gonna have a dance break with Krishna Washburn, so look out for that. And then tonight, we're going to close with a keynote conversation entitled Studio to Stage Pipeline, a story of racism, tondus, and Black death. So just stay with us or go do your thing. We will be here for the rest of the day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for joining today's sessions. A special thanks to our funders, the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, the Howard Gilman Foundation, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, the New York State Council on the Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts. A special thanks to our lead sponsor, Con Edison, and our lead dance advocate, Jody Gottfried Arnhold. Subsidies for the education and dance worker ticket tiers are made possible by the Arnhold Foundation. A special thanks to our host and partner level sponsors, Nell Shelby Productions, Gibney, In the Lights, and New York Live Arts. And last, but certainly not least, a special thanks to our justice, equity, and inclusion partners, Art Beyond Sight, Art Space Sanctuary, Asian American Arts Alliance, Center for Traditional Music and Dance, Indo-American Arts Council, the International Association of Blacks in Dance, Lotus Music and Dance, Museum Arts and Culture Access Consortium, National Association of Latino Arts and Culture, New York Foundation for the Arts, and Women of Color in the Arts. Up next, at 12 o'clock, you can take your lunch. At 1 o'clock, we'll begin our afternoon sessions. At 2:30, we'll take a short break, and at 2:45, we'll meet at the daily debrief. At 3:45, you can move your bodies in our daily dance break. At 4:15, you can visit our virtual expo showcase. And at 5:30, we'll have our keynote conversation. Stay connected with us by posting your takeaways on social media using the hashtags DanceSimp, DanceNYC 2021, and DanceSimp 2021. Explore the Whova features by building your agenda of sessions, connecting with other attendees, joining community conversations, and visiting the exhibitor hall. And don't forget to check out our 2021 Symposium digital program book with curated thematic guides. How are we doing? Did you like a session? Use the like feature on your favorite session. Got feedback for us? Take the post-event survey after March 20th and tell us how we did. Need help? Email us at customerservice@dance.nyc. A special thanks to our video asset and streaming partners, Renegade Performance Group, Full Out Creative, and Nell Shelby Productions. Thanks for joining. Keep in touch at dance.nyc.